So I wanted to quickly record, or hopefully a quick video, an update on Bitcoin since we are approaching price discovery here. I think we still need to confirm. We need to close today's daily candle. Let's see where we are on the daily. Uh, would like to see the daily close above 69,000, which we are looking very likely to do. Hopefully more above $70,000 to confirm price discovery. But I wanted to go back and look at this real quick because since we will be in price discovery mode and looking at all-time highs probably printed almost every day here forward, it's really anyone's guess as to where things might top out because now we are in a phase of the market where we will need to start looking at what the actual new all-time high will be before we get a substantial pullback. Just looking at previous markets, not that previous or previous cycles, not that previous cycles are any indication anymore because this cycle has acted completely differently from anything we've ever seen in the past. We've never had an all-time high before the halving. Bitcoin has never broken through its bull market support band without retesting it. It didn't do that either. So everything is essentially either on the table or off the table, however you want to look at it. But we just have to sort of react to what the market gives us and go from there. But I'm still of the opinion and could go back to one of my very first videos where I thought any potential downside would be muted because of the ETF buying. And so far, that's what's been happening. But just looking back at 2017's market top of just under $20,000, it peaked out at right around, I think, like 19,800, somewhere right in there. The very top fib retracement level from that original peak is about $73,495. So right around, I should probably make sure I'm drawing this really accurately just to get a better gauge. Let's see, let's zoom in here even more. The top was, yeah, somewhere in there. Of course, this is on Bitstamp, and Bitstamp has one of the longest histories that you can look at as far as a chart. So Coinbase's chart might be a little bit different, but overall, we're looking at it's about the level. It's very windy here today, so you might hear my dog growling at the wind in the background. That's Henry the Corgi. But so yeah, from the top fib retracement level, the 4236 fib retracement level from the original peak back in 2017. November of 2017 of just under $20,000. That level is about $73,000, give or take. It's somewhere right in there. We are right approaching that level right now, and I'm wondering if it's going to act as resistance for at least a little bit. I'll be really curious to see if it gets up to about 73,000 or above to see if we get a little bit of a rejection here, maybe even a retest. Personally, I would love to see one of these form again, maybe somewhere in this range. But knowing how things have gone, we might be going a lot higher before that happens. But, just measuring these recent legs up, we're kind of like right around that point where we would expect to see a pullback, especially in these new all-time high price discovery range levels. Selling here, in my opinion, seems like it would be. I mean, it depends how far you're up at this point. Everyone's position is different. Everyone's in a completely different situation. If you're trading it, and you've been in it since these lows, or you've been in it for years, taking a little bit off the table here never hurts. I was selling a little bit, just tiny little bits of Bitcoin on the way up to the new all-time high. Ended up selling right around the peak and then getting all of that back in just slightly lower. So I didn't really I didn't really make like a huge winning trade, but I did make a little bit back on it as far as adding to my Bitcoin position. So again, I would really love to see what happens here at this 73, 311 range, somewhere in there. And then the other thing I wanted to cover was, what we could start looking at as far as a peak. There's a lot to be said about the Bitcoin regression rainbow as far as, where things are going to top out. If you look at previous highs, so from the 2017 peak, the 2021 peak, it pretty much topped out just before that 426 level. So, the idea of the diminishing returns on Bitcoin is it's not going to reach the peak of the previous Fibonacci retracement level. So I would not expect this run. I mean, looking at this chart, it's possible, but I would be very surprised to see this chart or this price reach that 4236 level. Henry, trying to record a video here. Stop it. Again, anything's on the table. Sure, I would love to see Bitcoin hit $250,000. I would love it, or even break $200,000. Is it possible? Yeah, it's completely possible. Is it likely? I don't know, but I think the chances of it happening are actually a lot higher than they were prior to this action that we've seen that has sort of put, everything into play. I would more expect almost like the highest probability of happening. Obviously, nothing's a guarantee. We could get, rejected here and drop 40% for all I know, but one of the higher likelihoods of happening is this 2618 retracement acting as the market peak. And that leaves us around $144,000 to $150,000. And I've been considering that as the peak for quite a while now, a few years since this original structure formed. Once we formed this structure and then came down and finally found a bottom and a base, $150,000 seemed like a pretty logical top for a number of reasons. $150,000 is a round psychological number, which tends to act as resistance or support. It's pretty arbitrary, but $150,000 to me would make a lot of sense based on the Fibonacci retracement. Now, this is measuring from the original peak, which I tend to believe is the true peak, because I think this was almost a dead cat bounce that actually resulted in a new high. I think a lot of... All right, sorry, I had to put the dog outside. He will not stop barking at the wind. So where was I? Looking at potential peaks, again, as I believe I was explaining, $150,000 seems like a pretty logical top for a couple of reasons. Number one, it aligns with the Fibonacci retracement levels on the previous peaks, and it's a nice round psychological level. So if we measure from the original peak, which I believe is the true peak, because I think what we ended up getting here was more of a dead cat pounce that actually resulted in a new high. This new high of 69,000 should have never been formed. It should have probably died out closer to about 58, 59, maybe even $60,000. But the amount of liquidity in the system due to the COVID stimulus, instead of peaking out here, I think you had a lot of people FOMOing in, thinking it was going to go way higher, and then it ended up actually getting rejected, and that's when we started to crash down. So I like to treat this one as the true peak back here in April of 2021, not the November peak. But, we're sort of splitting hairs because there's only a few $1,000s there, And when we're talking about the difference here, so if we're looking at, well, will Bitcoin peak out, or this next market peak? Will it hit the 2618 of the original peak or the 2618 of the second peak? And what we have is a difference of let's make this a different color. Maybe increase the opacity a little bit. Let's see, we'll make it orange. So we have a range here of between 1,444, or $144,571 and $156,339. So, it's a $12,000 range, which is pretty significant depending on how much Bitcoin you're holding. But if it gets within this range here, especially towards the top of this range, I would start looking at that as a potential market top. With all things being different this time around, I could almost see us getting one of these formations where we go up to maybe 150 is about this peak right here, and then we have a pretty significant dip down, maybe like a 10-20% correction, and then we go higher up to about 225. So just to kind of look at this, let's see. Let's take all of this structure up to here, and we'll move this over. So again, I don't know how well you can see that. I'm going to bump up the opacity. Let's see. Let's make this a completely different color. All right. So again, as I was saying, if you take this structure here from back in 2020 and the 2021 run, maybe we go up to about 80 grand, which, $80,000 also makes sense for a number of reasons. Let's see. Let's take this fib. So if we create another fib retracement from the peak back in January, based on the ETF news, and then the crash down to the 38,500 low that it created, which I don't think anyone can still believe was the actual bottom of that formation. If we take that fib level, that takes us up to 83,200. Now look at this structure that we have here, that formed back in 2020, 2021. I mean, look how that lines up with current fib levels. Okay. So I could see the potential of it breaking through 80,000, and then we get a little bit of a pullback, and not a huge one, maybe down and retests the top of this formation. Maybe it comes down and retests 70,000. I don't think we're going to get anything that's massively oversold. I don't know that this is ever going below 60 or 65,000, at least not in this cycle. I keep thinking to myself, if we get a 10% correction or more, what will happen? People will probably FOMO. They'll probably start buying. And it's not just people anymore. It's the funds. It's the ETFs. It's all of the, market makers, essentially, that are now in play with this. We get a 10% correction. I think there is going to be a lot of buying interest. And we're just not going to see the corrections that we are used to seeing in a bull run. And now that I've actually looked at this, structure from 2020 and 2021, it lines up almost perfectly with the current fib retracements. And fib, like in price discovery mode, when no one knows where the top is, fib retracements are about the only way of gauging where things might go. And I realize a lot of people laugh at technical analysis and they think it's just a bunch of BS lines on a chart. And it is. It's completely, it's just a way to gauge where market sentiment might go. And if you are looking at the same thing that millions of other people are looking at, and you're like, wow, this thing might top out at about this 4236 level at $83,000, like, and then you start to see a little bit of resistance there and things start to pull back, you know, that's where you might want to start looking at some trades. But man, now that I'm looking at this is actually pretty interesting in terms of future market structure. Now, will it happen in the same amount of time? Do I see a peak in August? August usually isn't the peak. So, you know, we could do something like stretch this out to, let's say, November or December. Like, it could do something like that. You know, a lot of people seem to think that the peak will actually be in 2025 as well, and that's also entirely possible. Like, what if we got another April peak of 2025, March or April? So it could look like something like that. You know, the candles start to look a little silly because I'm basing this off of a 1-week chart, but, you know, I really like the way that looks. It's also got the bend to it where you would expect things to start to roll over. Yeah. I think this still coincides with a real possibility of $150,000 Bitcoin with a pretty substantial correction at that level. Now, of course, what are we talking about? Substantial correction from 150 down to maybe 100,000 or 95 or something like that. And then it regains its footing for yet another run for almost not a double peak, but, you know, something like this, but more extended out. Because there's going to be so much momentum behind this run and behind this cycle, with the halving and the amount of money that's coming in. So you have a demand and a supply shock all happening at the same time. It's not that we have a supply shock and there's not a lot of you know, liquidity in the system without the interest of buying it. It would be one thing if the halving happened, you know, down here at the bottom where people wouldn't really be that interested. Of course, that would have been a great time to buy, but we're getting a halving along with a massive increase in demand. And I think it's worthwhile to start considering some of these more elevated, ridiculous levels where if 18 months ago, if you asked me, or if you told me that I would start actually considering a $225,000 Bitcoin, I probably would have laughed. But then I probably would have said something like, you know, anything's possible within the, you know, crypto space. But the more I look at this structure, the more I look at how it does coincide with current fib levels and how it works with a previous pattern, man, that is really interesting. I think it's going to be something that I look a little bit further into, as far as planning for trades into the future. But this is something to keep in mind. You know, I'll leave this chart set up for now, and maybe we'll come back to it in a couple months and see where we're at. But this is looking pretty good. But yeah, I didn't want to make this video too long. I just wanted to sort of point out a couple major levels, especially now that we are approaching price discovery mode. Bitcoin just crossed back over north of 5% for the day. Again, just does not show any sign of slowing down. But anyway, thanks again for watching. To the 3 of you who are following me, I guess, smash that like button And don't forget to subscribe if you like the content, of course, or don't subscribe. You're just going to miss out on some at least somewhat interesting and level-headed TA. But anyway, I'm Tyson France with Small Account Strategy. Happy trading.